needs to be done.
Let's go live now to Eugene Kontorovich, Professor at George Mason University's Scalia Law School. Welcome to you. Thanks very much for joining us from Jerusalem. Just explain a little bit more about this law and what it could have changed.
Sure. So the law is almost less important than the Supreme Court's decision. Israel doesn't have a written constitution. And in the absence of a written constitution, the Supreme Court had declared a few decades ago, in what was called a judicial revolution, that laws that the Knesset passed called basic laws implicitly gave the Supreme Court power to strike down other laws. The Supreme Court also said that it has the power to strike down government action that it disagrees with, that it considers unreasonable. Now, the Knesset responded by passing a basic law, right, which the Supreme Court had said would be a constitutional, quasi-constitutional law, limiting the Supreme Court's ability to strike down government action like ministerial appointments, staffing decisions, because it disagreed with them or found them unreasonable. The Supreme Court said that the government does not have the authority, even by basic law, even by passing a constitutional law, as it were, to interfere with the Supreme Court's ability to set aside government decisions that it doesn't like. And what's significant about this decision is it seems there is absolutely no way to get around it. Because since the court says that it can decide what laws count as constitutional, and since the court has veto power over its own successors, the court's decision in this matter is essentially unreviewable.
So just explain to us why this decision has been made now, while Israel is in the middle of its greatest crisis for many decades. It's at war in Gaza, and the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said we need to be showing a united front right now.
So everybody says that we need a united front in Israel now. Indeed, Netanyahu's greatest rivals have joined him in a unity government. The motto of the country now is United We Win. There's signs everywhere saying United We Win. And here the court waded into the most divisive issue in the country's political history with a inherently divisive 8-7 ruling. And they did this for a simple reason. The majority would not have been able to get the result they want, to overturn the law, had they waited. Of the 8 judges in the majority, 2 have already retired. But due to a weird quirk of the Israeli legal system, the judges write opinions in cases that they have sat on even after they retire. So if those 2 judges had waited a little bit longer, they would not be able to join the opinion, and the result would instead have been the opposite. So they decided to divide the country at this time simply to get the result that they wanted, even by 1 vote.
What impact does this ruling have potentially on Prime Minister Netanyahu's future and the future of the war?
I think the Prime Minister's future and the future of the country is very closely tied to the future of the war, and that is why even those who are most opposed to the court's decision, even those who consider it completely illegitimate, a fundamental usurpation of democratic sovereignty, are not going to be resisting it now, because Israel needs to win this war. And the responsible people in the government are going to be completely dedicated to that. And the court probably knew that. The court knew that the government is not going to be able to respond in any serious way right now, because they're busy trying to win the war. And indeed, 300,000 Israelis have been called up to the army. Hundreds of thousands are displaced from their homes. There is not sort of the focus to be able to respond, even though at any other time this would be the single most important news story and domestic political issue in the country.
So given that, Professor, does that mean that there can be a further appeal further down the track?
So first of all, the Supreme Court, there's no appeal from the Supreme Court. The only way one would have thought one can change Supreme Court decisions is with a constitutional amendment. But the upshot of this decision is the Supreme Court can decide which constitutional amendments the Knesset is allowed to make, making their decision essentially unreviewable in any way whatsoever. It's likely there will be efforts to try to change it and also to change the composition of the court in the future, but now the focus has to be on defeating Hamas and defeating Hezbollah.
Okay, Professor Eugene Kontorovich, thank you for joining us from Jerusalem to explain all that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.